The Astronova, a sleek and powerful spacecraft, glided silently through the vast emptiness of space. It was humanity's most advanced vessel, designed for deep space exploration and armed with cutting-edge technology. Captain Evelyn Holt stared out of the bridge's window, her gaze fixed on the swirling stars beyond. It had been weeks since they had left Earth, and yet the stars still felt distant, cold, and indifferent. "Captain, we've detected something unusual." Lieutenant Harper's voice broke the stillness. He stood at a console, his brow furrowed in concentration. An anomalous energy signature, coming from a star system just beyond the Helios cluster. Holt's interest peaked. The Helios cluster was a region known for its dead stars and black holes, hardly a place one would expect to find anything of value. "What kind of signature are we talking about?" she asked, moving toward the console. "It's not like anything we've seen before. It doesn't match any known alien technology." "It's almost organic," Harper replied, curiosity in his voice evident. Evelyn exchanged a glance with her first officer, Commander Talon. "Organic," Talon repeated, skepticism heavy in his tone. "Are you saying this could be some kind of life form?" Harper shrugged. "It's possible, sir. But the readings are too erratic to pinpoint. Set a course for the source." "I want a closer look," Holt ordered, her voice steady despite the excitement building in her chest. This could be the discovery of a lifetime, a signal from another civilization, or perhaps the first indication of intelligent life beyond Earth. She couldn't help but feel a surge of anticipation at the thought. The Astronova adjusted its trajectory, its engines humming quietly as it moved deeper into the unknown. As they approached the source of the signal, the ship's sensors went haywire, picking up strange fluctuations in spacetime. "Captain, something's wrong," Harper warned. "The readings are intensifying. I'm losing control of the navigational systems. We're being pulled in." The crew braced themselves as the ship's hull groaned under the strain of an unknown force. A terrifying realization swept over Holt. "We're caught in a gravity well," she muttered. "Full power to the engines. Get us out of here." But it was too late. A massive surge of energy washed over the ship, sending waves of light and static through the control room. For a brief moment, everything went black. When the lights flickered back on, the Astronova was no longer in the same space it had been moments before. The stars outside the viewport had vanished, replaced by an eerie, deep black void. In the center of the darkness, a colossal alien structure loomed, an enormous, geometrically perfect object, pulsing with an otherworldly glow. "Where are we?" Talon whispered, his voice barely audible. Harper was already working furiously at his console, his fingers flying across the keys. "We're not in the Helios cluster anymore. This isn't even the same galaxy." Captain Holt took a deep breath, her pulse racing. "What is that thing?" The structure seemed to respond to their presence, a low hum vibrating through the ship. Then, without warning, a series of ships, sleek and impossibly fast, emerged from the darkness surrounding the Astronova. Their forms were hard to comprehend, shifting and changing, like reflections in a broken mirror. "We're not alone," Holt said, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "And I don't think they're here for a friendly chat." The crew stood frozen, watching as the alien ships encircled them, their weapons silently charging. And then, as if waiting for something, they paused. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. A strange, suffocating silence, heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. And then, through the ship's comm system, a voice echoed. Not in any language they recognized, but a voice nonetheless. Deep, resonant. It pulsed through their very bones. "Humanity has been watched for centuries. The test has begun." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a lingering sense of dread hanging in the air. Holt swallowed hard, her mind racing. Who were these beings? What did they want with humanity? Her gaze locked with Talon's, the weight of the moment sinking in. The universe had just sent them a message, and it was a warning. The tension in the bridge was palpable as the crew of the Astronova scrambled to assess the alien ships now surrounding them. Captain Holt stood rigid, her hand gripping the edge of the console as she tried to maintain control. The voice had vanished, but the threat it represented was all too real. "Captain, the ships are locking onto our coordinates," Lieutenant Harper reported, his voice shaky as he scanned the data. "We're being targeted. Weapons systems are primed. They're not here to negotiate." Holt's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Talon, how are the engines responding?" Commander Talon's face was grim as he worked the controls. "Engines are under full power, but they're preventing us from leaving this area. It's like we're caught in some kind of invisible net." Just then, the alien vessels unleashed their first strike. The burst of searing energy erupted from one of the ships, cutting through space and impacting the Astronova with a violent jolt. The ship's hull shuddered, lights flickered, and alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Shields at 50%, Harper yelled, his fingers desperately moving over the console. "They're overwhelming our defenses." The crew scrambled to respond, but there was little they could do. The alien ship's technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Holt's mind raced. How could this be happening? They had come here to explore, not to face annihilation. "Captain," Talon said, his voice edged with panic, "they're not just targeting us. Their weapons are being directed at Earth as well. I can see massive energy signatures building up near our planet." Holt's eyes widened. "No, they're not attacking just us. They're attacking Earth." Before she could respond, the view screen flared to life with a transmission from one of the alien ships. The image was distorted, filled with strange, alien symbols and an eerie, dark void. But the voice was unmistakable, a deep, resonating tone, one that carried both authority and malice. "Humanity's reckoning has come. You are no longer the insignificant specks we once thought you were. Prepare for the consequences of your curiosity." The transmission cut off abruptly, and in its wake, the energy weapons of the alien ships began to glow with deadly intensity. "Brace for impact," Holt shouted, just as another wave of energy slammed into the Astronova. This time, the ship groaned violently, and systems began to fail. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the hum of the engines faltered. "Shields are down," Harper shouted in panic. "Hull integrity is compromised. If we don't get out of here, we're going to be torn apart." But it was too late. A final, massive energy beam erupted from one of the alien ships, directly striking the Astronova. The ship's systems sputtered, and everything went dark. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, through the darkness, Holt heard a voice, a faint whisper over the comm system, breaking through the static. "The test has begun. The time of humanity's judgment is now." Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life. Holt blinked, disoriented, and tried to make sense of the situation. The Astronova was still intact, but barely. Half the ship's systems were offline, and the crew was rattled, yet alive. "Status report," Holt barked, forcing herself to stay focused. "We've been severely damaged," Harper replied. "Most of our propulsion is offline. We're drifting. But there's something else, Captain. The alien ships, they're leaving." Holt's breath caught in her throat. "Leaving? What are they doing?" "Scanning the entire fleet," Harper said, his voice lowering with disbelief. "They're not attacking anymore. They're retreating." A tense silence filled the bridge, and for a moment, the crew dared to hope that the worst was over. But Holt knew better. Their enemies hadn't simply left. They had sent a warning, and it was clear they were not finished with humanity. "We need to return to Earth. Now," Holt ordered, her voice unwavering. "We don't know what these beings are capable of, but we can't risk another strike like this. If they've shown us anything, it's that we are far from ready for what's out there." As the Astronova drifted toward Earth, the crew remained on high alert, knowing that what had just happened was only the beginning. The aliens had made their move, and now humanity had to prepare for the fallout of their sudden and terrifying interest. The Astronova limped through the vastness of space, the once proud flagship of humanity's exploration program, now battered and broken. Captain Holt stood at the command deck, her hands clenched around the railing as she stared at the shattered viewport, watching Earth's distant blue orb growing larger with each passing moment. The weight of the mission, of humanity's survival, pressed down on her chest like a physical force. The attack was not an isolated event. It was a declaration of war, and humanity had barely survived the first blow. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper's voice broke through the quiet hum of the bridge. "We're entering Earth's orbit. The planet's defenses are in chaos." The attack caught everyone off guard. We can barely get any communication through. Holt didn't need to be told how dire the situation was. She had felt the tremors of the alien assault herself, a visceral reminder of how outmatched they were. Earth had never faced anything like this. Their defenses, advanced by human standards, had been effortlessly shattered. Now the planet was defenseless against whatever came next. "Prepare for landing," Holt ordered, her voice firm despite the chaos swirling in her mind. "We need to speak with Earth Command, and we need answers. We don't have the luxury of time." As the ship descended, Holt couldn't shake the haunting message from the alien force. "The test has begun. The time of humanity's judgment is now." What had they meant by that? And why had Earth been singled out? These questions churned in her mind like an unstoppable storm. The Astronova touched down in a secure military zone near Earth Command's headquarters. Holt, Talon, and Harper made their way to the command center, where chaos reigned. Officers rushed around, inputting data, sending frantic messages, and preparing for an unknown retaliation. The air was thick with fear, but it was not just fear of the alien fleet. There was a deeper, more insidious fear, a fear that humanity was hopelessly outmatched. General Marcus Cole, a towering figure of authority, stood at the front of the command center, his sharp eyes scanning the situation. His reputation preceded him, one of the most brilliant military minds on Earth. But now, even his usually composed demeanor seemed frazzled. He turned as Holt entered the room, his face grim. "Captain, I've heard the reports. Your team barely escaped," Cole said, his tone low. "We've never seen anything like this before. These aliens, they're not just technologically superior. They're ancient, and we're just getting started. They'll return soon, and when they do, we'll need more than just our military strength to survive." Holt nodded, her mind racing. "What do you propose, General?" "We need to fight back," Cole said, his voice unwavering. "But it's not enough to rely on our current military strategies. We're not just dealing with superior weapons. These beings, they operate on a level of intelligence we can't even begin to understand. We need to unite Earth's greatest minds. We need every scientist, every engineer, every strategist who can help us prepare. We need a new kind of weapon, a weapon of ingenuity." Holt's brow furrowed as she absorbed his words. "A new kind of weapon. How do we even begin?" Cole stepped forward, his gaze hardening. "I've had our top scientists analyzing the data from the Astronova's mission. We've recovered fragments of alien technology. There's something there, something we can reverse engineer. But we need time. Time we don't have." Talon, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "How much time do we have, General?" "Not much," Cole said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Nixians, the aliens you encountered, they've only just made their move. We suspect they'll return in force soon. If we don't act now, we might not be around long enough to make a difference." Holt felt the weight of his words like a hammer to the chest. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the entire human race. The very idea that humanity could be wiped out by an enemy so far beyond them seemed impossible. Yet it was happening. "We'll need a strategy," Holt said, her voice resolute. "And we'll need all of humanity behind us. I'll work with you, General. Whatever it takes. Good, Cole replied. I knew I could count on you, Captain. Together, we'll show them what humanity is made of. The room grew silent as the realization set in. This was their last hope. They had no backup, no allies. It was up to them to forge a path forward. And in the coming days, humanity would have to prove its worth in the universe. The air in Earth Command was thick with urgency. The meeting room, usually calm and composed, was now filled with a dozen high-ranking military officers, scientists, and strategists, all buzzing with anxious energy. General Cole stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of determination. Around him, holographic displays flickered, showing tactical maps, alien technology readings, and frantic messages from scattered Earth defense outposts. Captain Holt. Commander Talon. General Cole said, his voice calm but urgent, we need every edge we can get. Our best chance to strike back is through the alien technology we've recovered from the Astronova. But we've hit a wall in understanding it. The Nixians have left us a twisted gift, something we're still struggling to decode. It's far beyond anything we've encountered before. Holt nodded. The clock's ticking. We need something, anything. We can't wait much longer. Talon stood at the back of the room, scanning the data as he paced. There's something strange about the patterns in their technology, he muttered. It doesn't just operate on a different energy signature. It's alive. Somehow, it's like it has its own intelligence. Cole turned sharply toward Talon. What do you mean, alive? Talon's expression darkened. It's almost as if the technology itself is organic. There's a neural network embedded in the design, something that mimics biological processes. If we could figure out how to interface with it, we might gain an edge. But just as hope seemed to stir, a loud crash from the far corner of the room interrupted the conversation. Holt spun around, her hand instinctively going to her sidearm. But there was no immediate danger. A technician had dropped a stack of reports, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. Sir, the technician stammered, his voice barely audible. It's happening. The Nixians, they're here. The room fell deathly silent. Everyone rushed to the nearest console, watching as Earth's defense systems began to register an incoming fleet. The digital readouts showed multiple ships, massive, hulking vessels moving swiftly toward Earth. There was no mistaking it. The Nixians had returned, and they weren't wasting any time. How long until they arrive? Holt asked, her voice grim. 6 hours, the technician replied, his hands shaking as he typed. They're already in the outer orbit. This time, it looks like they're bringing everything. The room erupted into chaos once again as the officers scrambled to organize a response. Holt exchanged a look with Cole and Talon. Time was not on their side. Every second that passed made their chances of survival slimmer. We need to act now, Holt said, her voice cutting through the panic. General, what's the plan? Cole's gaze hardened. We don't have time for a conventional defense. The Nixians are too strong. We need to go after their command ship, the heart of their fleet. If we can cripple their flagship, we might be able to slow them down enough to make a stand. We can't get to their command ship without facing their entire fleet, Talon said. We'll be obliterated before we even get close. We don't have a choice, Cole responded. If we wait, Earth is done. But if we strike first, if we show them we can fight back. Suddenly, there was a hiss of static on the comm system. A familiar voice crackled through, distorted but unmistakable. Captain Holt. Commander Talon. General Cole. I've intercepted your communications, said the voice, cold and mechanical. It was one they hadn't expected. The voice belonged to Dr. Felix Graves, a trusted scientist on Earth Command's top research team. Graves had been working on deciphering the alien technology recovered from the Astronova. But there's something you need to know, Graves continued, his tone now laced with fear. I've been working on the Nixian technology, and I've made a horrifying discovery. The Nixians are not acting alone. They've been manipulating us from the start. Holt's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? I can't explain it fully over comms, but Graves said, his voice now cracking with panic. The technology we've been studying. It's not just advanced. It's been designed to draw us in, to give us false hope. They've orchestrated everything. The attack on your ship, that was just the beginning. The real test is about to start. And we're the experiment. The connection cut abruptly, leaving a stunned silence in the room. Holt's mind raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The aliens weren't just invaders. They were manipulating humanity, guiding them toward this conflict. But why? What was the test? Before she could voice her thoughts, another technician hurriedly approached, his face pale. "Captain, you need to see this." Holt followed him to the main console, where the technician had brought up a live feed from one of Earth's deep space observatories. The feed showed an immense black void, pulsating with energy, drawing in everything around it like a massive cosmic drain. But there, at its center, was something even more disturbing. A colossal, shimmering structure, unlike anything they had ever seen. It looked as though it were forming, shifting in and out of existence, as if it was born of both space and time itself. "What is that?" Holt whispered, horrified. The technician shook his head. "We don't know, but it's growing. And the Nixians are heading straight for it." Holt's chest tightened as she pieced together the meaning of Graves' warning. The Nixians hadn't just come to conquer Earth, they had come to witness humanity's reaction to their twisted test, and now they were leading them towards something far worse. "General," she said quietly, turning to Cole, "we have to stop them before they reach that thing. If they succeed, we'll need to act fast," Cole interrupted. "And we'll need to trust no one. It's all on us now." As the team braced for the coming battle, the true scale of their predicament began to settle in. The war for Earth wasn't just about survival. It was about uncovering the dark truth behind the Nixian invasion before it was too late. The atmosphere in Earth Command had shifted. What was once a hub of frenzied military action now felt like a powder keg, every officer and scientist aware that the world stood on the precipice of destruction. Holt's pulse raced as she stood before the main command screen, her eyes fixed on the massive black void displayed before her. It was the centerpiece of their new nightmare, a cosmic anomaly of unimaginable power. The Nixians were heading straight for it, and they were taking humanity along for the ride. "General," Holt said, her voice tight with urgency, "what are we up against? What is that thing?" Cole stood beside her, his eyes narrowed as he observed the feed. "We don't know yet. Our best guess is that it's some kind of dimensional rift, like a tear in space-time itself. The Nixians are drawn to it. It's their destination, and they won't stop until they reach it. And the worst part," Talon added from behind them, his voice low, "is that they've been guiding us toward it all along. Every encounter, every attack, it's all been part of their plan. That thing, it's not just a place. It's a weapon, or worse, a trap." Holt's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The Nixians' sudden interest in Earth, their overwhelming technological superiority, and the eerie message they'd received all pointed to something much more than a simple invasion. "Graves," he said something about an experiment. "What if this is all a test, like he said? What if we've been manipulated from the start?" Cole's expression darkened, and he turned sharply to face the officers gathered around. "This isn't just about conquering Earth. The Nixians have been observing us, studying us, guiding us towards something far more terrifying than we ever realized. If that rift is what we think it is, a portal to another dimension, or something even worse, then the consequences for Earth are unimaginable." A technician hurried forward, holding a datapad in his hand. "Sir, we've detected another anomaly. It's spreading from the rift. There's a pattern to it. It's like it's opening pathways, forming connections with the Nixians' fleet. They're linking to it, but we can't figure out how or why." Holt felt a chill creep down her spine. This wasn't just a war. It was a cosmic puzzle, one with pieces that didn't fit, at least not in any way humanity understood. The Nixians were not simply invaders. They were manipulative, and they had orchestrated every move up until this point. Humanity's fight for survival was becoming a race against time to understand a force far beyond their comprehension. "We need to stop them before they reach that rift," Holt said firmly, looking to General Cole. "If they open it fully, we'll be pulled in with them. Earth will be lost." "But we don't even know how to fight back," Cole replied, his voice heavy with the weight of the situation. "We're barely holding on as it is. And now, with this new technology, it's clear that the Nixians have been manipulating our understanding of everything. If that rift is linked to their technology, it might be their ultimate weapon. Then we need to turn it against them," Talon said, his eyes suddenly focused. "If we can reverse engineer their technology, especially the neural component, we might be able to disrupt whatever power is fueling the rift." Holt nodded, the idea sparking a flicker of hope. "If we can do that, we might be able to sever their connection to the rift, or at least delay it long enough to give us a fighting chance." Cole's eyes hardened. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The Nixians have shown us they're far more advanced than we ever could have imagined. But we're not without options. We've got Earth's finest minds working around the clock. If anyone can figure this out, it's us." Just then, a communications officer burst into the room, her face pale. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission. It's from the Nixians." The room fell silent, every eye on the officer as she activated the comm system. This time, the voice that echoed through the speakers wasn't the same as before. It was colder, more calculating, almost as if it was deliberately trying to instill fear. "Humanity, you've made your choice. Your fate is sealed. The rift is your final trial. If you cannot overcome the test, you will cease to exist." The voice paused, the silence that followed thick with menace. "Do not think you can stop us. You will be pulled into the rift, along with your world. And when you arrive, you will see the truth. You are not the first to be tested. You will not be the last." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. The Nixians' words hung in the air like a death sentence, and for a moment, no one spoke. "Captain," General Cole finally said, his voice low, "they've declared our fate, but we won't go down without a fight. We have one shot at this. We find a way to destroy that rift, and we take down the Nixians. They've underestimated us before, and they'll do it again." Holt took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "We won't just fight for Earth. We'll fight for our future. We're not their experiment, and we're not going to let them make us a footnote in their twisted history." The team rallied around her, the weight of their task clear but not paralyzing. It was humanity's time to rise, to prove that even in the face of a universe far larger and more dangerous than they could have ever imagined, humanity could fight back. The room at Earth Command was charged with an electric sense of urgency. The Nixians' message was still fresh in the minds of the command team, each word a cold reminder that their survival was no longer a guarantee. Holt stood at the center of the room, surrounded by experts from every corner of Earth's scientific community. They had just hours before the Nixian fleet would reach the rift, and every minute spent deliberating brought them closer to the point of no return. General Cole addressed the room, his face resolute despite the overwhelming odds. "We know what we're facing. The Nixians have made it clear, if we don't stop the rift, Earth is done. But we're not ready to roll over and die. This is humanity's last stand." The room buzzed with nervous energy, but beneath it, there was an undeniable sense of purpose. Despite their limitations, they were determined to fight back. Holt's eyes moved to the large screen at the front of the room, where the rift's image was projected, growing ever closer. Time was running out. "We've made some progress," one of the lead scientists, Dr. Elena Rios, spoke up, her voice calm but focused. "We've deciphered parts of the alien technology, and we believe we can exploit the neural network embedded in their systems. If we can tap into their frequency, we might be able to shut down their connection to the rift, at least long enough for us to intervene. And how long would that buy us? Holt asked, her voice edged with skepticism. A few hours, at best, Dr. Rios replied, her eyes narrowing. But those few hours could be the difference between life and death. Talon, who had been quietly observing the conversation, stepped forward. We also need to understand that the Nixians are not just trying to destroy us. They are trying to make a point. They want us to fail. The more we resist, the more they will push, the more they will test us. We need to expect more from them than just a direct attack. We need to be prepared for anything. Holt nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The Nixians weren't just a military force. They were a force of nature, testing humanity's very will to survive. But they had underestimated something vital. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to learn, and to fight back when pushed to the brink. We're not just fighting for Earth, Holt said, her voice rising with determination. We're fighting for every single person in this galaxy who's ever dared to dream. If the Nixians think they can crush us underfoot, they're wrong. We'll show them what it means to face humanity. Prepare for battle, Holt ordered, her voice like iron. All hands, brace for impact. The fighter ships launched from the Astronova, cutting through the blackness like rays of defiance. Holt watched as the small fleet scattered, darting toward the enemy, their weapons blazing in desperate defiance. She knew that even with all their firepower, they stood little chance against the Nixian juggernaut. But it wasn't about winning. It was about buying time. Time for Dr. Rios and her team to unlock the key to the Nixians' technological advantage. The first shots were fired. Explosions rocked the space around them, as human and alien vessels collided in a deadly ballet. The fighters moved with precision, launching torpedoes and lasers that lit up the dark expanse of space. But the Nixians didn't flinch. They responded with calculated brutality. Their shields were nearly impenetrable, and their weapons tore through human ships like paper. Enemy flagship is in range, Lieutenant Harper announced. Captain, if we don't hit it now, we'll be swarmed. Holt didn't hesitate. All weapons, focus on the flagship. Let's see how they like a taste of their own medicine. The Astronova's cannons fired with a thunderous crack, unleashing a barrage of energy that slammed into the Nixian flagship. The alien ship shook, but it held firm. Another wave of Nixian fighters swarmed in, and the Astronova's shields flickered dangerously under the assault. We can't keep this up much longer. Talon yelled from his station, his voice laced with tension. We're losing ships too quickly. If we don't act now, we're going to be overwhelmed. We have no choice, Holt replied. We keep fighting. We hold them off for as long as we can. As the battle raged on, Holt's thoughts were a whirlwind. The plan was simple. Take out the flagship, disrupt their control over the fleet, and give Earth scientists a chance to sever the connection to the rift. But the reality was far more chaotic than anyone had anticipated. The Nixians were relentless, pushing back with every ounce of their strength. And yet, humanity had something they hadn't counted on, an unwavering determination to survive. An alarm blared from the command station, cutting through the chaos. Captain, Harper shouted, eyes wide with alarm. The rift is opening. It's destabilizing the entire fleet. Holt's heart skipped a beat as the massive swirling rift in space began to pulse erratically. The energy radiating from it was growing exponentially, cascading outwards like a shockwave. The Nixian ships moved into formation, as though they were preparing to harness the rift's power. This is it, Holt whispered, her mind racing. If the rift fully opened, there was no telling what would happen. No telling what horrors the Nixians could unleash. She knew that this was the moment. The fight wasn't just about taking down a flagship. It was about stopping the rift itself. All ships, break formation. Holt barked. We go straight for the rift. If we can destabilize it, we can throw them off course. But as the fleet adjusted, a chilling sound echoed through the command deck. The Nixians were activating something far more dangerous than anything they had yet encountered. From the core of their fleet, an enormous beam of dark energy shot out, aimed directly at the Astronova. The beam's intensity was blinding, and Holt knew that if they didn't do something fast, the flagship would be obliterated. "Brace for impact," Holt shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. The moment stretched into eternity as the beam of energy closed in, but just as it was about to strike, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield. The Astronova lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. The impact sent shockwaves through the ship's systems. Holt's breath caught in her throat as the ship's systems flickered, then stabilized. She looked out the viewport to see the Nixian flagship engulfed in a blinding explosion. But it wasn't over. The rift was still there, and the battle was far from won. "We've got one shot left," Holt said, her voice steely. "Prepare the ship for a final push. If we can't stop the rift now, we're all going to be dragged into it. Full speed ahead. This is humanity's last stand." The Astronova raced toward the heart of the rift, the ship's engines screaming under the strain of maximum speed. Holt's fingers gripped the controls tightly, the tension in her body mirroring the frantic pulse of the battle unfolding around her. The Nixian fleet was still in pursuit, their weapons blazing, but the human ships fought back with a fury that could only come from a species that had everything to lose. "We're almost there," Lieutenant Harper called out, her voice trained but focused. "The rift's energy readings are off the charts. It's getting unstable. If we don't act now, the whole sector could collapse." Holt's jaw clenched. They had no choice but to push forward. The Astronova shook violently as another Nixian blast connected with the ship's shields, sending a shockwave through the hull. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the lights flickered briefly, but the ship held together. Just a little longer. "Captain, we've got an opening," Talon said from his station, his eyes glued to the holographic readout. "The Nixian flagship is distracted, and their fleet's forming up for another charge. We've got to break through before they can regroup." "Do it," Holt commanded, her voice unwavering. "We've come this far. We're not stopping now." The crew sprang into action, firing on all cylinders, coordinating their final push toward the rift. The Astronova dodged another barrage of fire, slipping between the Nixian warships with breathtaking agility. Holt's heart pounded in her chest as the rift grew larger, its eerie energy warping the very fabric of space around it. The ship's sensors went haywire, warning lights flashing and alarms blaring, but Holt barely registered them. They were close, so close. "We've reached the rift's core." Dr. Rio's voice crackled over the comms, filled with a mix of triumph and dread. "I'm initiating the disruption sequence now. Get ready, Captain. This is going to get messy." "Do it," Holt said, her throat tight with anticipation. For a moment, there was nothing but the eerie hum of the rift's energy, a deep, resonating sound that vibrated through the ship's bones. Then, with a sudden surge of power, a massive pulse of energy erupted from the rift. The Astronova shuddered, its hull creaking as the surge hit. The crew braced themselves, the tension thick in the air. They had to hope this worked. If it didn't, everything would be lost. Connection established. Dr. Rios shouted, her voice a breathless mix of relief and fear. "I've got access to their neural network. Now, I'm shutting it down. Now." A shockwave rippled outward from the rift as Dr. Rios' system initiated the disruption protocol. The rift's energy began to flicker, as if it were fighting against the human intervention. The Nixian fleet responded immediately, their ships converging around the rift, sending another round of devastating fire toward the Astronova. "We're running out of time," Talon shouted, his voice taut with urgency. "The Nixians are moving to intercept. They're not going to let us shut this down so easily." "Keep pushing," Holt barked, her eyes fixed on the chaotic display of lights and ships in front of her. The Astronova's weapons fired once more, the blasts connecting with the alien ships that tried to block their path. For a moment, it felt as if they were fighting an impossible war, as if nothing they did mattered against the unstoppable tide of the Nixian onslaught. But then, something shifted. The rift's pulsating energy began to slow, its vibrant glow fading to a dull, unstable flicker. The ship's sensors flickered with new data, and the crew shared a collective breath of disbelief. The rift was destabilizing. Their plan was working. It's working. Dr. Rios confirmed, her voice shaking with triumph. The neural link is collapsing. The Nixian control is breaking down. But just as hope began to rise, a cold chill ran through Holt's veins. She looked out the viewport to see the Nixian flagship maneuvering directly into their path. The alien ship was massive, its weapons powered up for one final strike. Brace for impact. Talon yelled, but it was too late. A beam of dark energy shot from the flagship's cannons, aimed directly at the Astronova. Everything seemed to slow down. Holt's hands flew over the controls, trying to evade, trying to survive. But the beam was too fast, too powerful. There was no way to outrun it. Shields at full power, Harper shouted, but the shields were already failing, their energy depleted from the earlier battle. Then, just as the beam made contact, the rift flared one final time, releasing an enormous burst of energy. It enveloped the entire battlefield in a blinding flash, and for a heartbeat, everything went silent. The shockwave knocked the Astronova off course. Holt felt the ship lurch violently as her crew screamed in terror. The force of the explosion ripped through the Nixian fleet, tearing apart the flagship and sending debris scattering into the void. But in that instant, as the rift began to collapse, Holt realized the unimaginable. They had done it. They had stopped the rift. The battle, the invasion, the war, it was over.